We're at the Louis Miller Museum interviewing veterans as part of our military series. Would you please tell us your name?
Edwin Russell Kennedy.
All right. Ed, where do you live? In Hoosick Falls now?
I live in Hoosick Falls.
Good. And could you tell us a little about yourself before you went to the service?
Where you went to college and where
Well,
you grew up.
I was working for Shell Oil Company when I was called up as a reserve officer and sent to war.
I see you were in the reserves.
I was in the reserves.
I see, and you were an officer. All right. Now, when they sent you away, when they called you up, where did you go? You know?
Sent me to China.
They would send you to China.
Yeah.
I see. And what was your job in China?
Well, I was more or less searching around, finding where the military could be of benefit to the Chinese. I was sort of scouting around, trying to find out what was needed and what the military might be able to do, and so on and so on.
I see. What was your rank?
I was a colonel.
You were a colonel?
In the Air Force.
Wow, that's high.
Well,
you're the highest one we've had so far.
Well, I'd been in the ROTC, and I just stuck with it. And
I see. What did you take up in college? What did you study in college?
I was a chemical engineer.
A chemical engineer.
No.
So you must have been a little older when you went into service than the guys I'm interviewing that were 18.
I've forgotten precisely, but I was born in 1911, and the war was in
40. That's 30.
34,
Yeah, so you were in your
35,
30s when you come into service.
You can see how old I was.
Yeah, you were in your 30s when you come into service.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, well, what college did you go to?
Caltech.
Caltech.
Yeah.
I see. And you became a chemical engineer. You went to work for Shell,
Yeah.
right? And then you got called up because you were in the ROTC. You got called. You were in China.
Yeah, well, I was a reserve officer. I'd been in the ROTC and had kept my commission. And so once the war broke out, they called me up.
I see. So you were in China. And how did you? How long were you in China? Did you spend most of your time in China, or did they send you somewhere else?
A little time in India, en route to China, but I spent most of my overseas time in China.
I see. Did you have any connection with, like, the Flying Tigers or any of those people that were over in China?
Yes, you did.
I was aware of them, and on occasion I would see them, but I was not part of them.
Flying Tiger.
I see. And he was part of the fight?
Yeah, we've got the patches and everything.
I see. You were part of the Flying Tigers.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's great.
And, Dad, you might want to mention how you altered the carburetors of all the Jeeps in China. Do you want
Yeah, well, tell us about that.
I modified the carburetors so they would run on alcohol,
Oh,
because that was the only fuel that was available.
I see. So they ran on alcohol because you could change it. That's great.
I changed the carburetors.
And then you once helped repair a Jeep or a vehicle of a Chinese officer.
Yeah.
And who did that Chinese officer report to? Do you recall?
Well, very highest.
Yeah, it was Chiang Kai-shek.
Chiang Kai-shek, the head guy.
And they honored Dad with a fancy dinner afterwards in his honor.
I see. That was great.
And he had to eat everything, or he would be considered rude.
Yeah.
And I bet you were full.
Yeah.
All right, and then there you were in China, and then anything else that you'd like to say about China, or?
No, other than you found things different there, so you got accustomed to it, and you lived the proper life in China.
And
Can I make a comment? Is that
go ahead.
I remember my dad telling me when he came back, someone asked him after the war, "Oh, do you like rum and Coke?" And he assumed it was a drink. And who was it, the Andrews sisters? It was a song.
They sang a song,
yeah,
yeah,
but he didn't know because he was in China. And they said, "Do you like rum and Coke?" And he thought, "Ugh, it doesn't sound like it tastes very good to me." And it was actually a song, but he was unaware.
I see. Okay, then, so you came back from China, and you were discharged from the service,
Yeah,
and then you got married, probably,
probably.
and then you had a nice daughter. How many other kids have we got here, other than your daughter?
I'm afraid it's only two, a boy and a girl.
A
That's
boy?
the second marriage, Dad. You had a first marriage, there's Virginia and Nancy
Yeah.
from the first marriage, and he was
Yeah.
married during World War II.
Oh, he was married when he was over in China.
Right, his first two children are ages, let's see, I'm 46, 56 and 58.
I see. And then he got married again after the war,
Right.
and then
And
you
then there's
and...
myself and my younger brother.
I see. All right, and then who'd you go to work for after you got out of the service?
Shell Oil Company.
You went back to Shell.
Yeah, I left them when I went overseas, and they welcomed me back.
Yep. All right, and then you worked many years for Shell.
Yes, until I reached the retirement age.
I see. And what did you do for Shell? Do you know?
Well,
It's petroleum
Mainly,
type things, right?
what you're?
Petroleum and gasoline
Oh, sure.
type things.
Well, I was involved with petroleum products and their distribution and various things like
Yep,
that.
and then you moved on to the Port Authority in New York City,
Yeah,
located at the World Trade Center.
yeah.
Working for Shell.
No, no,
No,
no,
working
working
for
for
the
the
Port
New York
Authority.
Port Authority.
Oh, working for the Port
Um,
Authority
Yeah,
in
they-
New York.
It just seemed natural to work for a local outfit, and the Port Authority was a local outfit.
He was in charge of the monitoring the emissions of cars in the Lincoln Tunnel and set up testing in the Lincoln Tunnel
I
to
see.
figure out toxic accumulations and things like that.
I see. What was the Legion of Merit that I heard about?
The Legion of Merit was awarded to Dad for his work in converting all the Jeeps in China to
Cool.
run on alcohol.
Yeah. How come Shell didn't convert our cars into alcohol?
Well, they did some of that in California,
They did in California.
you know.
Well, fine. And anything else you'd like to put on tape?
Anything else about your schooling at Caltech?
What, dear?
I believe that your schooling at Caltech is significant because you received all three of your degrees in the same place.
Yeah, yeah.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
Well,
What your degrees were in?
I got a doctor's degree and a master's and bachelor's and so on, all at California Institute of Technology.
I see. So you have a doctorate,
Oh, yeah,
and especially in chemical engineering.
yeah,
That's a hard doctorate to get.
yeah.
Yep.
One of his, there's an exam that's given for your doctorate, and part of it is oral.
Yes, right.
And you may not remember this, but he had told me this, and I had read about this. One of the people that quizzed him on his oral exam was Linus Pauling.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's quite a
Back
thing.
then was
Yeah.
relatively obscure.
Well, wonderful. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about? Anybody, Eve, or do you think anything else we'd like to put on tape?
You're pretty active, aren't you? You go for a walk every day.
Oh, yeah. And, well, by and large, I was just more or less stuck with the military after a fashion. I got a commission as a youngster, and so I just stuck with it during the war.
All right, after the war, did you stay in the reserve?
Pretty much until I reached the retirement age.
I see. So you were a colonel, and then when you went into the reserve, did they up you from colonel, or
No.
did he stay a colonel
He
in
was
the...
probably in the war. He was
No.
probably lieutenant colonel.
No, I made colonel during the war,
Oh,
I
okay.
see.
and so on. I think I went in as a major and became a lieutenant colonel and finally a colonel.
Oh, that's wonderful. Is there anything else then? Well, we thank you very much for coming out on a snowy, miserable day and coming and see us. We really appreciate it. Thank you very, very much.